Welcome back. Spring is officially here, and a lot of you gardeners are going to start to dig in the dirt. Expert gardener and garden line host CL Fornari has some tips to show us all how to have a beautiful season.
I'm CL Fornari, and I am an out-of-control plant person. As the host of Garden Line on WXTK, I frequently hear from people saying, what can I do in the early spring? And so today, that's what we're going to talk about, what you can do in the garden in the early spring. This is the most exciting time in the garden because you can be filled with plans and creative ideas, and at this time of year, of course, it seems like anything is possible. So let's look at what we can do at the garden right now. This is a thyme plant, and this is how thyme looks after the winter. And it needs a really good haircut. You don't have to be timid. You know, when a perennial like this is all brown, you can cut it right to the ground, and you can cut it with a pair of scissors or with a pruner such as I'm using. Most perennials at this time of year, if you haven't already trimmed them down, you can take all that winter-worn stems and foliage right off. Here are all the little green shoots that are just waiting to take off once the weather gets warmer. The other plant that you should be cutting down at this time of year are your ornamental grasses. This one happens to be a sea oat grass, but no matter what variety of grass that you have, this is the time of year to cut them down. April is the time to prune roses. We say prune roses when the forsythia blooms. And the reason that that's the time to prune roses is at that time you can clearly see what's living and what's dead. Anything that's living has these little red shoots on them, and those shoots have the capacity to grow into a stem with flowers on the end. For that reason, you don't want to cut the plant down too far. So basically trimming them a little bit off the top is what a rose needs. If it has any dead foliage on it, you can take that off. Any dead branches you should cut off. This one is in pretty good shape. Any branches that are kind of headed into the middle of the plant should come off. And other than that, just give them a good trim. And now for the number one question that Cape Codders have: how do I prune my hydrangeas, and when do I prune them? You prune hydrangeas in April or May, and you prune them when you can clearly see what's living and what's dead. At this time of year, you can see the buds are swelling, and some of them are nice and green. And each one of those nice green buds has the ability to grow into a shoot with a flower on the end of it. So we don't want to prune very many of those living buds off. That's the key to having lots of flowers on your hydrangea. You never want to prune it down too short. Now, the first thing that you do when you prune any plant is to remove the dead wood. And that's why we wait to prune hydrangeas until we can see what's living and what's dead. And don't try and prune them standing up. If I tried to prune this plant standing up, I could only reach down so far, and I wouldn't be able to prune the stems all the way to the ground. And then you leave some ugly looking stumps if you do it that way, and they collect leaves and litter. The thing to do is to get right down next to the plant and prune out anything that is dead right at ground level. Then the next thing that you do is you prune down to the first or the second pair of viable buds you come to, moving from the top down. Now, on this plant, I have some viable buds right at the top of the plant. So I'm not going to cut those off because that will have a flower. Other stems I can prune way down. If this is how you prune a hydrangea, just neatening up the plant by cutting down to the first or the second pair of buds that you come to from the top, your hydrangea will always have a lot of flowers, but it will be cleaned up. So whether you're pruning your hydrangeas, dividing perennials, or planting pansies, I hope you get into your garden this spring. It's all happening in your own backyard.